To this now, the South African Council of Churches is concerned about recent verbal attacks on Public Protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane. A recent Financial Mail cover depicted her with images of snakes around her face and questioned if she is the enemy of the state. Well, the SACC is calling this characterization of the Public Protector distasteful, saying it seriously undermines the dignity of her office. To discuss this now, we're joined from our Pretoria studios by the SACC General Secretary, that's Bishop Malusi Mpumlwana. Mpumlwana, thank you very much for your time. Why is this distasteful for you, this depiction?
You know, our political environment has become very toxic. And it is all very well to query and question a particular point of performance, but it is totally inappropriate to attack the person in a manner that depicts them as enemy of the state, because what that does is to fuel potential violence and maybe even sort of factionalism around these issues, which is unfortunate. We've always done this. We've always complained about the nature of the discourse when people are objecting to things in our country. We have to rise to a level where, particularly with Chapter 9 institutions, object but don't personalize. I mean, even the idea of interviewing an 87-year-old mother is totally inappropriate. And these are the kinds of things that should not be done.
I wanted to come to that element about the mother of the Public Protector being interviewed at a later stage. But now that you've raised it, what are the dangers here? What are the concerns?
Holly, you go to a workplace, you don't expect your son, your daughter, your mother, your uncle to be interviewed about you, especially given the seniority of the age of this lady. By all accounts, it is just the kind of thing you just don't do.
Bishop, how do people exercise?
I mean, she's a prophet. It's a prophet. You see, it's a different thing if you're a politician. A public protector is not a politician. It's an office of the state. It's kind of like if the Auditor General has made all these findings against municipalities, somebody goes and interviews their family about it. Why?
Bishop, talk to us about how people should distinguish between criticizing the office and the incumbent in the office. How do people exercise restraint in that sense? Because when you're blaming something, you've got to blame it on someone. And right now, she is in that office.
Yeah, I have no problem with blaming or even criticizing the person. I have an issue with the characterization. If you look at that image, it is not just blaming. It is actually characterizing the person in an evil manner and then add to that enemy of the state. Surely, really, you can't use language like that against a Chapter 9 institution. Can you say that against the chairperson of the IEC? Can you say that against, the Chief Justice? You can't do these kinds of things, even if you don't like what they've done.
Bishop, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but as you're speaking, we actually had the image of the Financial Mail, and someone looking at that image might say, I don't see anything offensive about that cover. What is it that is really irking you about this particular image?
First of all, the language of enemy of the state for an institution, a Chapter 9 institution, that reference itself, is problematic. And then secondly, there are images of snakes. At least that's how I see it. Images of snakes around their head. How would you interpret the intention of images of snakes around a person, given the understanding, cultural interpretation of snakes in the African society?
At one point, the former Public Protector, the former incumbent in that office, Thuli Madonsela, was called a spy, if memory serves. How would you compare that to what is happening to this Public Protector?
You'll notice that our statement has talked about the characterization of the name calling. In fact, there was a time when Minister Pravin Gordhan was referenced to as a dog. Even then we made the statement that you don't do this kind of thing, because even though he's a politician, even that would be inappropriate. We have to find, there has to be somebody in this country, and I think the churches must do that, that calls all of us to some measure of restraint about how we relate to one another in the public space.
Just as a final question to you, Bishop, the public protector herself, as the South African Council of Churches, I'm sure you've observed a lot that's been happening around her. How would you characterize her composure, her demeanor, and her utterances at times?
We have had some reservations about the recent self-characterization in the context of Mrs. Winnie Mandela. And again, because Mrs. Mandela is a political figure, and we do not want Chapter 9 institutions to be politicized. And our view is that we would have advised you to say, you don't go there. Object to all the things, but don't politicize them, because the more you politicize them, the more you make your office fair game for political attacks.
Bishop Malusi Mpumlwana, thank you very much for your time.